Welcome, I'm Darren, and I'll be your guide today as I rank the worst baseball designs for 1993. When putting this together, the football had far exceeded baseball in terms of how many card sets there were. So in baseball, they were no longer the gold standard for the card industry, for designs, for just the presence in the hobby. There were only 16 main card designs in this year. There are a couple of peripheral ones I didn't want to get into, but for the 16 that I considered to be kind of the main cards that we collected, that gave me the ability to just split the whole expanse of baseball card designs into two. 8 that were better and 8 that were not as good. And this is the 8 that were not as good. And by splitting in the middle, that means that the middle boundary is either going to lean in one direction or lean in the other. And that means that where I start this list at number 8 with Select, this really isn't one of the bad designs. In fact, a lot of these aren't really bad designs, but they do all have a lot that they're missing. And in the case of Select, this is a really fascinating case because for Select, this was what Score Pinnacle developed as their first ultra premium brand. And it's baffling to see why they thought that this was going to work. In fact, what's really fascinating to me is that I remember in 1993, there was a pretty vibrant discussion about, is Select or SP better? It sounds absolutely stupid now for many different reasons, but the main reason is when I look at the cards now, I can't figure out why. But that being said, I was football. And over in football, SP was a lot closer to Select because Select in football, it had a better color, it had a glossier finish to the card, and it had gold foil on each card, which meant that the cards for us in football by Select were much fancier. Over in baseball, it's really fascinating because the cards don't have any special accoutrements to it, and the card stock is actually pretty basic. It really is weird that this is supposed to be a higher end than Pinnacle. I mean, the design is a lot better. And I will give them credit for that. In fact, if they had done this for Pinnacle, Pinnacle would have been a lot better. But it wasn't, and it looks to me almost like an insert set for Pinnacle. That's really kind of the way that it comes across. But like I said, it is a good card design. I like the 2 colors of green. I like the two border bleed, the way that it frames everything. It works really well with the images. I think it comes across great. If it had been glossy, it would have helped a whole lot. The backs weren't all that great, but that's just kind of the way that it worked. But this card, it really did need something more to carry, not just in terms of being an ultra premium brand, but also in terms of just working on its own. It is a bit lacking. And so while I think it's a good card, it needs more. It really needs more. By 1993, I needed to see more from this card. So I've got it here at 8. And at number 7, I'm not moving very far away in terms of just how it comes across because I'm going with Donruss. And in the case of Donruss, this is a card where every time I find it, I discover it and I'm blown away. Gorgeous cards. The images do tend to be well selected. I love the stone 3D effect that they have for the detailing down at the bottom for the logo and the player name, all of that stuff. The way it comes across, I think, is great. Really taking a cue from Ultra and succeeding with it. And I really do like it. With one major exception, and that's the white border around the outside, and I don't get why companies used white borders. There are certain qualities that a white border provides to a design team. It does create very neat edges, and so the big problem that the white border has is all of the things inside. That's great, but that white border stands out. It's distinct, and it creates a terminus on all sides. If you let the image bleed off, then all the things in the image read a lot better. So while the border did give a few little advantages to the design team, for the most part, it held it back. In fact, if you look at 1992 Donruss, that works a lot better with the design inside and the white border on the outside. The design inside isn't nearly as good, but the way that it works fits better with the white border. They just, in part because of the color fade, it just is a better combination. Whereas when you go to 1993, This absolutely needs not necessarily no border, but something other than a white border. If it had a gray border, if it had a black border, or maybe some really nice tone to a color, it would have worked so much better, but they didn't do that. Now granted, I'm glad they didn't do like gold or silver foil around the outside, thank you for that, but the white border is just wrong because it really ruins everything that the card was doing on the inside. So Donruss would need a little bit more work until they really figured it all out, and I just don't know why they landed here with a white border. Regardless, it is otherwise a really good card. And when I moved from number 7 to number 6, I'm actually going to the best design overall of all of these, which is Donruss Triple Play. And the reason I say that this is the best of all of these designs, and yet I have it here at 6, is because, well, I'll get to that. So first off, they used my magic cheat code, black border, great choice. And with the red detailing, it makes a perfect combination, which really brings out, it has a subdued quality that brings all the colors in the card out, makes them a lot more pronounced. It has a very elegant look to it, and yet the red brings out a vibrance, and I love the way the logo is, and the brand logo. The way all this comes together, and that silver text for the player name, just a great combination across the board on the card front. And that's really what is so great about this card, is every time I look at the front of this card, I just go, that is an awesome card. I look at it and I think this is what Pinnacle should have been in 1993. So in the case of Triple Play, this was a card brand that was built around kids. And in 1992, it was all about kids with a super bright card that was so bright that if it was still in the pack, in the box, in a case, in the back room, you could still see the card. It was that bright, which is what it needed to be for kids. But Donruss knew we've got to now evolve with kids as kids get older and they get more serious about cards. This was their attempt to make a more serious card, and they nailed it. Absolutely nailed it. But there is one problem with it, which is that when you flip it over to the back, that card, it's still a very nice card back, but it's still designed for kids. And this is what throws me off about this card. It's the fact that on the front, it looks like it's a great card, but when I turn it over, it always throws me off and it makes it feel kind of kitsch. And that is, it's really unfortunate because I want to love this card in every aspect, but it throws me off. And normally a card back shouldn't be really taking that big of a toll on a card, but in this case I have to do that because the whole card set just feels like it's not supposed to, it doesn't fit front to back. That's, I guess, what I want to say. So I got to put here at 6, where on the card front it should be at 8, but on the card back it pulls it back. So those are the honorable mentions. And now we move into the actual top or bottom 5, which I kick off with Stadium Club. And in the case of Stadium Club, this is the best Stadium Club card that they had made and would probably make until about 1996. It is really kind of nice. And as far as all of the Stadium Clubs across all the sports in 1993, I think baseball is the best looking of all of them. I'll have to look at that and figure it out. But in the case of baseball, it's that red box that really makes it work better than the others. And then there's basketball, which is a whole nother conversation. The problem Stadium Club had was what they had all the way back in 1991, which is they did a full bleed image, which can work if you select the image right. And in 1993, the images do look really good. And when you look at an individual card, this card looks great. When you put a number of cards together, now it all blurs together, and that's part of the problem that Topps had, was they didn't understand how to work with Stadium or work with a full bleed card to make the images pop. You've got to focus on the actual individual image and make sure the image stands out within the image, and these cards don't do that. So on an individual basis they work, in multiple cases they don't. And it has a Stadium Club card back, which is just unforgivable. So for me, this is the first card that just flat out didn't work. Now it is nice, but they have the pieces they need to make a great card, but they didn't pull it together. When I move to number 4, this is another one of those interesting cases where at number 4 with Topps, this is a much better card. It does everything right on the front and it does everything right on the back. This is probably the best card back of all of the cards in this list. And on the card front, this is, while I would put 1991 Topps better than this, you probably have to go back to about 1987 in baseball to find a better card design than this 1993 design. I mean, it really is good. I like the team colors. I like the bracketing, the way that it's all laid out, the way that it works with the images. That works great. And the reason I have it here at number 4 is because this is from that dark era in the history of Topps that I keep forgetting. If I think back and go, what was 1993 Stadium Club look like? I can remember that in a heartbeat. 91 Stadium Club, I can remember. 92 is always tough for me. When it comes to Topps, I can usually remember 1994 pretty easily. 91's always easy, 90 is easy, but 92 and 93 are a blur. It always throws me off. And that's the problem that this card has, is the fact that it's more of a white noise design. It looks really good, but it's not at all in any way memorable. And it drives me nuts. I wish that I could remember this design better because it is nice, but it gets its own way of not being able to work as a really good card design. So that's pretty unforgivable. A card design needs to be able to resonate over the years, and this one doesn't. But it's otherwise a really good card. When I move to number 3, I'm going now to Pinnacle. And for Pinnacle, this is an unforgivable sin. When Pinnacle got started in 1991 with football, and then again in hockey shortly thereafter, they had a really good card design. I mean, a really, really good card design. I love the way that the 91 design looked. And there was a glossiness to it that made it look really good. And in 1992, they just made it better. And so that's what baseball fans discovered was the 92 card, where they have the black border. They have a great color fade down there with the team color on it. It just, everything about 92 really worked. And then 93 came, and I don't know what happened. It's almost like they scaled Pinnacle back to make Select look better. I don't get it. The card doesn't have the same glossy quality to it. It lost all color on the front. The images aren't as strong as they had been in 1991 and in 1992. The card back is, okay, I'll give it half credit on the card back because I love the picture. Other than that, this card back and front, it's just a huge step down for Pinnacle. And I'm not just grading this low because of its relationship to the previous year. I'm grading it lower because it is a very forgettable design. I mean, I like the fact that they tried to put some gold foil on the front to make it more interesting, but apart from that, the card is just absolutely sterile. It feels like it was made in a boardroom, like somebody sat down and said, okay, let's just, here's some Post-it notes, make that. And they made it, and it just doesn't work. It really doesn't. I don't know why they did this, because they'd been doing really well. But this is number 3. And when I move on to number 2, to Bowman, you can see that we're definitely now in the doldrums, because 93 Bowman was the best Bowman card we had received at that point. They were getting better. The legacy of Bowman was really sad in the 80s and 90s. I don't get what the thought process was for the designs. I'll never understand that. They loved them some white borders, and that's a big part of the problem. Mainly here in 1993, because the images did tend to be pretty well selected. I'll give them that. And I like the elements they put in, which could have possibly worked. But again, you get that white border that is really tough to make work. And they did not make it work. The card back was getting better. Bowman was actually starting to get that kind of in line. But the card front is just boring, 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 boring. The only reason this card has any value, any reason for getting excited about it, is because it was produced in smaller numbers, so it's more rare. That's it. That's all it had going for it. And I don't even want to get into the foil cards, because I don't think the foil cards look very good. The only reason we get excited about them is because it doesn't have the white border. That's really all it comes down to. So Bowman would need a lot of work to get better, and fortunately they would do that. In 1994, they'd finally start to get into the groove of fixing this whole card design thing. So I'm looking forward to when they get around to that, but at this point in 1993, they hadn't quite gotten there, and it just, yeah, it's not great. But For number one, there's one old reliable that you can always turn to, which is Fleer. Fleer's always there to, if not be at the bottom of the list, to be close. And 1993 was no exception. They had done a pretty bad job in the early 90s of developing card designs, and it was pretty impressive because in the 80s, in the mid to late 80s, they actually had a pretty good job. They'd done a pretty good job of making card designs that were clean and kind of nice. And then it was like they were paying a penance for all of the goodwill they'd had. And in 1993, they tried to pull things in and make a really formal card. And in football, they kind of pulled it off. I don't know where football's going to land, if it will make one of the lists, but for football, they actually had some positive qualities to it. But in baseball, I really don't know what they were doing, and that's a common theme for Fleer. This is no exception. They started off with a great move by having a silver border, not silver foil, silver. That is perfect because it creates a really nice quality to it. It looks nice, looks kind of elegant. It makes everything inside look a lot richer. It's got a really nice soft tone. And then they have a splash of team color, and the images, well, the images are part of the problem because they really run right into the background, so you don't really see the player. And then the background kind of runs into that color field on the side, which means that everything inside the card just runs together, not like a big hot mess, but like some big bland, it's just everything falls apart and becomes a stew, as it were. And the text in the side, you can't even read it. So when you look at this card, it almost looks like a card back, which is convenient because when you flip it around, actually the card back's not that bad. I look at this and I go, 91 Ultra. That was the good thing about Ultra, was the card back. This very much carries into that. I love the name on the back, a little bold, but I love that. The image is, okay, the image of the player is really small, and that big field is too big. And then they don't really have a lot else going on the card back. So the card back has a really great, quick hit where it jumps out, makes a statement, and then it doesn't really carry with you very much anymore. But it is the strength of the card. So this is a card where it's better to look at it in reverse, which is not a good sign. Fleer really did have a great ability to show up right around the bottom of all these lists, and this is absolutely no exception. So, that's my list of the worst card designs in baseball for 1993. If you haven't seen the other videos that I've done for 92 and 91, I've already been covering this for quite a while. So definitely go check those out. I'll be covering the other worst of moving forward, and then I'll be getting into the best of for 1993 in the upcoming weeks. And if you haven't subscribed, I do urge you to do so. And I want to thank you for watching.